my wife told her friends, Leo is not exactly what I imagined when I thought about a husband. So I prepared myself and took revenge. Hey everyone, before we dive into this story, I just want to say, please subscribe, like, and turn on notifications. Seriously, not many people watch until the end, and the channel really needs support. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, make sure you stick around. Hi Reddit, I want to share something that's been weighing on me for a long time. It's about my marriage, how it started, how it changed, and how I ended up questioning everything. My name is Leo. I'm 38, and I built my career from the ground up. No fancy degrees, no expensive MBA, just hard work, persistence, and a natural talent for fixing financial disasters. That's what my company calls me, the fixer. When businesses find themselves in deep trouble, I step in and sort things out. I'm good at what I do. I have a solid reputation, I make good money, and I live a comfortable life. But none of that seemed to matter to my wife, Celeste. Celeste is 36. She works in marketing for a large cosmetics company. If I had to sum her up in a few words, I'd say, status is everything to her. She cares about appearances, connections, and how people perceive her. That's not to say she's a bad person. At least, I didn't think so when we first met. 10 years ago, she was different, or maybe I just didn't see the warning signs. We met at a mutual friend's party. She was sharp, ambitious, and confident. She had this ability to walk into a room and command attention without even trying. I was drawn to that. Back then, she seemed to admire my work ethic. She liked that I wasn't some corporate suit with a trust fund, that I had built my own path. We clicked, we dated for 2 years, and then we got married. The first few years were good. Normal couple things, date nights, vacations, small arguments here and there, nothing serious. But then, little by little, things started to shift. It wasn't overnight, and it wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, like a slow leak that eventually floods the whole house. At first, it was small remarks. Comments about my clothes, how I should dress more sophisticated for business events. Criticism of my food choices, ordering steak instead of something healthier when we ate out. Then it became my workouts. I've always kept in shape. I played rugby in college, and I still box and train in MMA. But suddenly, she had opinions about that too. You're getting too bulky, she'd say. Or, you should focus on definition instead of size. I laughed it off at first. I thought, okay, she just wants me to be my best self. But then it got worse. The criticism extended to my personality, my habits, the way I spoke, the things I found funny. I started feeling like nothing I did was good enough. And then there was the bedroom. It's not that we stopped completely. It was just different. She became distant, uninterested. There were remarks about me, not meeting expectations, even though nothing had changed on my end. I tried talking to her about it, but she'd brush it off. You're imagining things. I'm just tired. Work has been stressful, but the distance was real. The worst part? She didn't seem to care about my problems. When my dad was diagnosed with cancer, it hit me hard. I took time off work to be with him, to help my mom, to handle everything. Celeste didn't like that. She didn't say it outright, but I could tell. There were little digs. You're spending a lot of time over there. Or, you're not even fun to be around anymore. When he passed, I was devastated. I shut down for a while, and she complained. Complained that I was moody, that I wasn't making an effort in our marriage. That was the moment something broke inside me. I started seeing our marriage for what it really was. Or at least, what it had become. A performance. Something that looked good from the outside, but was hollow on the inside. And I started wondering, was it always like this? Did I just not see it before? Or had she changed? I don't know. But what I do know is, I can't keep pretending. Celeste had been talking about this dinner party for weeks. She wanted to impress her colleagues, the higher-ups at her company, and show off our home. I wasn't thrilled about the idea, but I agreed. It wasn't worth the argument, and honestly, I was used to going along with things for the sake of keeping the peace. I took care of everything. Deep cleaning the house, making sure everything was spotless. I spent hours preparing a high-end meal, filet mignon, truffle mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables with balsamic glaze. I even made a homemade cheesecake from scratch. I picked out expensive wine, something rich and full-bodied that would pair well with dinner. I wanted to make sure everything was perfect. Not for me, but because I knew Celeste wanted this night to be flawless. The evening started well. Her colleagues arrived, dressed in designer clothes, their laughter filling our living room. The conversation was light, full of polite compliments about the house, the food, the decor. I played the role of the perfect host, making sure everyone had what they needed, keeping their glasses full. They seemed genuinely impressed by the meal, even complimenting my cooking skills. For a while, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this night wouldn't be so bad. But then, after the third glass of wine, I saw it. That look. I knew it too well. The slight narrowing of her eyes, the way her lips pressed together before stretching into a smile that didn't quite reach them. Celeste was about to say something cruel. She always had a way of delivering it with a laugh, something that could be passed off as a joke, but I knew better. She leaned back in her chair, swirling her wine, and looked at me with a smirk. "You know," she said, voice dripping with amusement, "Leo isn't exactly what I imagined a man to be." The table went quiet for a beat, then a few nervous chuckles. I felt my stomach tighten, but I forced a smile. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice steady. She giggled, lifting her hand, and made a gesture with her fingers, her thumb and index finger held close together, as if measuring something small. A humiliating, unmistakable implication. The room exploded with laughter. I sat there, my face burning, my grip tightening around my glass. It wasn't the first time Celeste had made a joke at my expense, but this was different. This wasn't a private jab, a subtle remark I could brush off. This was a deliberate, public attack. A performance, meant to entertain her audience. I swallowed the anger rising in my throat. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, watching, waiting to see how I'd react. I forced a chuckle, setting my glass down carefully. "Glad to know you've been holding that one in," I said lightly. The laughter slowly died down, and the conversation moved on, but the damage had been done. I sat there, barely hearing the words around me, staring at my untouched plate. I realized something in that moment. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't just an offhand comment made in the heat of the moment. Celeste knew exactly what she was doing. And I knew, without a doubt, that something had to change. After the guests left and the house was quiet again, Celeste moved around as if nothing had happened. She hummed softly as she stacked the empty wine glasses, casually wiping down the kitchen counter. There wasn't a single sign that she had just humiliated me in front of a room full of people. I stood there, watching her, my jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. I had held it together all night, smiled through gritted teeth, played my part. But now, with just the two of us, I couldn't stay silent. "Do you seriously think this is normal?" My voice was low, but there was an edge to it. She glanced at me, eyebrows raised in exaggerated confusion. "What?" I took a step closer, my hands tightening into fists at my sides. "What you did at dinner. That little show you put on. Do you think that's okay?" She let out a laugh, light and dismissive, as if I had just asked her if the sky was blue. "Oh, come on, Leo. It was a joke. You're too sensitive." I stared at her, waiting for something, an apology, even a flicker of recognition that she had crossed a line. But there was nothing, just that same amused smirk, as if my reaction was the real punchline to her joke. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. "Right? A joke." I turned away before I said something I couldn't take back. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Celeste drifted off to sleep beside me, completely unbothered. My mind wouldn't shut off. The laughter at the dinner table replayed over and over, but it wasn't just tonight that haunted me. It was everything. Every comment, every look, every moment where I had brushed off the things she said because I didn't want to believe what they really meant. Her voice echoed in my mind. "Maybe you should wear shoes with thicker soles." A passing remark about my height, said with a playful grin but laced with something sharper. The way she looked down at me when I tried to make her feel good, like my efforts were just mildly amusing rather than appreciated. The time she would roll her eyes at my clothes before we left the house. "You don't even realize what color goes with your face." As if my choice of shirt was an embarrassment to her. It wasn't just toxic behavior. It wasn't just her being critical or having high standards. This was something else. This was years of erosion. Small, calculated cuts, each one shallow enough to ignore in the moment, but together, they had left deep scars. I turned my head and looked at her, sleeping peacefully beside me, as if nothing had happened. And for the first time, I saw her for exactly who she was. 2 days after the dinner party, I started noticing something strange. Celeste had always been attached to her phone, but now it was different. She kept it face down every time she set it on the table, on the nightstand, on the kitchen counter. If I walked into the room while she was texting, she would subtly angle it away from me. It wasn't obvious, but after years of watching people lie for a living in my line of work, I knew the signs. I told myself I was overthinking it, that I was still bitter about the dinner, about everything she had said, and I was looking for reasons to be angry. But that feeling wouldn't go away. A tight knot in my stomach that told me something wasn't right. Then, one morning, while she was in the shower, her phone lit up on the bathroom counter. A message popped up on the screen. "Last night was incredible." My breath caught in my throat. Then, another one. When again. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at the glowing screen. My hands felt cold, my pulse pounded in my ears. I told myself not to do it. That looking through her phone would make me someone I didn't want to be. But that voice, the rational, reasonable one, was drowned out by something louder. I picked up the phone. The password was still the same. The messages were there, waiting for me. An entire conversation thread, casual and unashamed. His name was Justin, 35 years old. A personal trainer who, from what I gathered, still lived in his parents' basement. They had been talking for months, maybe longer. And they had been laughing at me, message after message, mocking me in ways I hadn't even imagined. Celeste had written, "He doesn't even realize that I'm lying next to him, still feeling another man." Justin responded with laughing emojis. "But he still thinks you're just tired, huh?" The conversation was filled with inside jokes about me, things only someone close to me could say. They joked about my habits, my mannerisms, my blind loyalty. The messages weren't just about sex. They were about me being pathetic. A joke they were both in on. I felt something inside me snap, not in anger, not in pain, but in clarity. This wasn't just cheating. This wasn't just a mistake. This was deliberate cruelty. Slowly, carefully, I took out my phone and took pictures of everything. Every message, every detail, every insult. I made sure there was no way she could deny it. Then, just as calmly, I set her phone back down, exactly as it had been. And for the first time in years, I felt like I had the upper hand. The moment I put Celeste's phone back down, I knew there was no coming back from this. The marriage was already broken, but now, there wasn't even the illusion of something worth saving. She had humiliated me, betrayed me, and laughed about it behind my back. But if she thought I was just going to confront her, yell, demand an explanation, she was wrong. That wasn't how this was going to play out. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a dramatic scene. I was going to be smart. The next day, I made an appointment with one of the most ruthless divorce attorneys I could find, Jane Clark. She had a reputation for getting her clients exactly what they wanted, sometimes more. The kind of lawyer people hired when they weren't looking for a fair split, but for complete victory. When I walked into her office, she barely looked up from the documents on her desk. "You're the fixer, right?" she said, flipping a page. "The guy businesses call when they're in trouble?" I nodded. She finally glanced up at me, a sharp smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Good. Then you understand how this works. We don't just divide the property. We make sure you get the most." I liked her immediately. She laid out a plan, precise and calculated. There was no emotion in it, no wasted time on moral debates. Just action. First, I opened a new bank account under my name only. Quietly, methodically, I started transferring money. Nothing too obvious at once, just small, steady withdrawals over the course of a week. Enough that when the time came, I wouldn't be caught off guard. Then, I made a full inventory of everything valuable in the house that had been purchased with my money. I took photos, gathered receipts where I could, and documented every expensive item: furniture, electronics, jewelry, even the artwork on the walls. If Celeste thought she was walking away with half of what I had built, she was in for a surprise. Finally, I found an apartment and signed a lease under a different name, paying the deposit in cash. It was small, nothing extravagant, but it was mine. A place I could go when the time was right. Celeste had no idea. She still went about her days as if nothing had changed, still setting her phone face down on the table, still throwing empty smiles my way. But she didn't realize that the game had already begun. And this time, I wasn't the one being played. The night I decided to confront Celeste, I made her favorite dinner: homemade pasta with a rich, slow-cooked bolognese sauce, paired with a bottle of her preferred red wine. She walked into the dining room, completely unaware, flashing me a pleased smile as she sat down. "Well, this is a nice surprise," she said, swirling the wine in her glass. I nodded, watching as she took the first bite. I let her enjoy it, let her think this was just another ordinary evening. Then, without a word, I reached for the folder I had prepared and placed it in front of her. She frowned, setting down her fork. "What's this?" I leaned back, voice calm and steady. "I know everything." For a second, she didn't react, just stared at the folder as if it might disappear if she looked at it long enough. Then, slowly, she opened it. The first page was a printout of her messages with Justin, the ones where she mocked me, where she admitted to lying next to me, still feeling another man. The next few pages were screenshots of their conversations, timestamps, photos. Everything she thought was hidden. Shock. Her mouth fell open slightly, her breath caught. She flipped through the pages faster, eyes darting over the words as if she was trying to find some way out of this, some way to undo what was in front of her. Then, denial. She snapped the folder shut, shaking her head. "This isn't what it looks like." I let out a quiet laugh. "That's the best you've got?" She swallowed hard, sitting up straighter. "Leo, listen to me. I made a mistake, okay? It didn't mean anything. Manipulation." She reached across the table, her voice softening, eyes wide and pleading. "You've been distant. You haven't been the same since your father passed." I felt alone, and she let out a shaky breath. "I was stupid. I swear to you, I never meant to hurt you." I stayed silent, letting her dig the hole deeper. When she realized I wasn't reacting, the mask finally slipped. Anger. She shoved the folder aside, her expression twisting into something sharp and cruel. Fine. You want to act like the victim? Like you're so perfect? Maybe if you had paid more attention to me instead of feeling sorry for yourself, we wouldn't be here. I exhaled, shaking my head. There it is. What? She snapped. The real you. I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back. I'm not leaving because of the betrayal, Celeste. I'm leaving because of your attitude. Her eyes widened. No, wait. But I was already walking away. I had said everything I needed to say. There was nothing left to discuss. The game was over. And I had won. I didn't wait. The moment I finished my sentence, I turned and walked upstairs, leaving Celeste frozen at the dinner table. I could hear her breathing unevenly, could almost feel the panic rolling off her, but I didn't care. I had nothing left to give her. I had packed most of my things in advance, so it didn't take long to grab the last of what I needed. Clothes, important documents, the few personal items that actually mattered to me. Everything else, she could keep it. Let her sit in that house, surrounded by the things she valued more than the person she married. She followed me up the stairs eventually, her voice shaking between desperation and rage. Leo, please, wait, we can talk about this. I ignored her, shoving the last duffel bag over my shoulder. This is ridiculous. You're throwing everything away over one mistake. I laughed under my breath. No, Celeste. You threw everything away. I'm just finally walking out of the wreckage. Her face twisted in frustration. Oh, so that's it? You think you're just going to leave and move on? You think I won't make this difficult for you? I turned to her then, fully calm, and for the first time in years, I felt completely in control. I don't think, Celeste. I know. Because you have nothing to hold over me anymore. She opened her mouth, but I didn't wait to hear whatever excuse, insult, or threat she had lined up next. I walked past her, down the stairs, and out the front door without looking back. It was late when I arrived at my new apartment. The place was small, unfamiliar, almost empty except for the essentials I had moved in earlier. But it was mine. For the first time in almost a decade, I was in a space where I could breathe. But there was still one last thing to take care of. I sat down, pulled out my phone, and opened the anonymous email account I had set up. In the recipient field, I typed in the email address I had found online for Justin's father, a respected businessman, the kind of man who prided himself on appearances. The message was short, just a few lines. You should know what kind of man your son really is. Attached were screenshots, not just of the affair, but of the messages where Justin mocked the fact that he still lived in his father's basement, how he bragged about spending his dad's money while sleeping with another man's wife. I hit send. Then, I turned off my phone and let the silence settle in. The next few days were predictable. Celeste's messages started almost immediately. At first, they were desperate, full of apologies and promises. I messed up, but we can fix this. Please talk to me. Then came the anger. You're a coward. Running away like this proves you were never man enough for me. That one made me laugh. Then, the threats. You think you can just leave? You'll regret this. I ignored them all. Every text, every missed call, every mutual friend she sent to try to talk some sense into me. I blocked her number, unfollowed her on everything, and moved on. 9 years. 9 years of manipulation, of being chipped away piece by piece. But it was over. And for the first time in a long time, I was finally free. Celeste had always built her life around appearances. Her job, her social status, her carefully curated image, everything she valued was tied to how people perceived her. But the thing about standing on a pedestal is that the fall is much harder when it finally comes. I didn't have to lift a finger. The consequences of her actions took care of everything for me. It started with her job. Celeste worked in marketing for a large cosmetics company, a place where networking and reputation were everything. What she didn't realize was that her boss, a man who also had a history of affairs, had his own secrets to protect. The moment whispers started about Celeste's personal drama, he made a decision: throw her under the bus before anyone could start looking into his own indiscretions. She was fired under the guise of restructuring. But the truth was obvious. The industry was small, people talked, and she became the topic of every whispered conversation in her field. No one wanted to hire someone with a reputation for making reckless choices that could become a liability. Then, the rest of her world started to crumble. The friends she had paraded around, the ones she had always tried so hard to impress, slowly distanced themselves. No more dinner party invitations, no more weekend brunches, no more admiring glances at her perfect life. They weren't real friends, just people who thrived on status, and the moment hers slipped, they moved on without hesitation. With no job, no financial stability, and no one to keep up appearances for, she had no choice but to move back in with her mother. The woman who had raised her, the one Celeste had always looked down on, criticized for being too simple and not ambitious enough, was now her only safety net. I could only imagine how that conversation had gone. I never reached out. I never checked in. I didn't need to. I had spent years being treated like I wasn't enough for her. And now, she was the one left with nothing. It wasn't revenge. It was just karma, settling the score. Life after Celeste was quiet at first, and that was exactly what I needed. No drama, no manipulation, no walking on eggshells. Just peace. With the divorce finalized and my finances secured, I bought a new apartment in the city center. It was modern, sleek, and nothing like the house I had shared with her. That place had always felt like a showroom, carefully decorated to impress guests, not to feel like a home. This new place, it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every detail, was chosen for comfort, not for appearances. I could finally breathe. I got back into boxing. I had never fully quit, but during my marriage, I had let training slip more than I wanted to admit. Celeste always had something to say about it. How it was too aggressive. How she didn't want me looking too bulky. I had stopped caring about her opinions long before I left, but now, without her voice in my head, I felt the difference. The first time I stepped back into the gym, the scent of sweat and leather hit me, familiar and grounding. I wrapped my hands, stepped into the ring, and let everything go. Punch after punch, round after round, I felt the weight of the past lift off me. It wasn't about anger. It wasn't about proving anything. It was just me, reclaiming a part of myself I had lost. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was actually living for myself. No more second-guessing. No more being made to feel like I wasn't enough. No more wasting my energy trying to hold together something that was never worth saving in the first place. I didn't know what was next, and for once, I was fine with that. Because whatever came my way, I knew one thing for sure. I would never let anyone like Celeste have power over me again. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I was finally settling into my new life. The weight of the past was gone, and for the first time in years, I wasn't constantly bracing for another argument, another insult, another game. I thought it was over. Then, one morning, a knock on my door changed everything. I opened it to find a court officer standing there, holding an envelope. Without a word, he handed it to me and walked away. I already knew what it was before I even opened it. A subpoena. I skimmed the pages quickly, my jaw tightening as I read. Celeste was trying to dispute the divorce, claiming she had been forced to sign the papers under duress. She wasn't stopping there, either. She was demanding $100,000 in damages for emotional distress and claiming that I had ruined her career. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. It was such a pathetic, desperate move that I almost couldn't take it seriously. But when I called Jane Clark, she wasn't laughing. "This is serious," she said, her tone sharp. "She's throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. If she finds even the smallest crack, she'll drag this out for years." I leaned back against the counter, exhaling slowly. She's delusional. She knows she signed the papers willingly. There's no way a judge believes this. Maybe, Jane admitted. But the legal system isn't always about truth. It's about who can argue their case better. If she finds a judge sympathetic to her story, or if she plays the victim well enough, you could be stuck dealing with this for a long time. I ran a hand over my face. I should have expected this. Celeste had lost everything. Her job, her reputation, the life she had carefully built around status and appearances. And now, she was looking for someone to blame. That someone was me. I could already picture her in court, tears in her eyes, playing the role of the wronged woman. She had always been good at manipulation. If I underestimated her now, I'd regret it. Jane's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "We're going to fight this, but you need to be ready." I clenched my jaw. I am. Because this wasn't just about money. This was war, and I wasn't about to lose. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I was finally settling into my new life. The weight of the past was gone, and for the first time in years, I wasn't constantly bracing for another argument, another insult, another game. I thought it was over. Then, one morning, a knock on my door changed everything. I opened it to find a court officer standing there, holding an envelope. Without a word, he handed it to me and walked away. I already knew what it was before I even opened it. A subpoena. I skimmed the pages quickly, my jaw tightening as I read. Celeste was trying to dispute the divorce, claiming she had been forced to sign the papers under duress. She wasn't stopping there, either. She was demanding $100,000 in damages for emotional distress and claiming that I had ruined her career. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. It was such a pathetic, desperate move that I almost couldn't take it seriously. But when I called Jane Clark, she wasn't laughing. "This is serious," she said, her tone sharp. "She's throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. If she finds even the smallest crack, she'll drag this out for years." I leaned back against the counter, exhaling slowly. "She's delusional. She knows she signed the papers willingly. There's no way a judge believes this. Maybe, Jane admitted. But the legal system isn't always about truth. It's about who can argue their case better. If she finds a judge sympathetic to her story, or if she plays the victim well enough, you could be stuck dealing with this for a long time. I ran a hand over my face. I should have expected this. Celeste had lost everything. Her job, her reputation, the life she had carefully built around status and appearances. And now, she was looking for someone to blame. That someone was me. I could already picture her in court, tears in her eyes, playing the role of the wronged woman. She had always been good at manipulation. If I underestimated her now, I'd regret it. Jane's voice pulled me from my thoughts. We're going to fight this, but you need to be ready. I clenched my jaw. I am. Because this wasn't just about money. This was war, and I wasn't about to lose. Celeste never knew how to lose gracefully. That became painfully clear when she realized she wasn't going to win in court. Instead of letting go and moving on, she did what she always did. She turned to manipulation. It started with whispers. Mutual acquaintances suddenly looked at me differently, their smiles tight, their conversations shorter. I could feel the shift. Then, the rumors started. She told people I had been abusive, that I had controlled her for years, that I had isolated her, made her feel worthless. She made sure to phrase it carefully, always implying, never outright stating. Enough to make people doubt. Enough to make me look like the villain. Then came the anonymous posts. Articles on local forums and social media, talking about a high-powered financial consultant who had mentally and emotionally tormented his wife, leaving her when she was at her lowest. She painted herself as the victim, the poor woman discarded after years of silent suffering. She even posted old pictures of us, back when things looked happy. The captions were always something gut-wrenching. He left me when I was at my worst, after everything I gave him. And, of course, some people believed her. There were always those who would rather take a sob story at face value than question the full truth. But the thing about lies is that they fall apart when put under pressure. The people who actually knew me, who had seen our marriage up close, who had watched the way she spoke to me, the way she tore me down over the years, they weren't so easily fooled. And the ones who worked in my industry, who knew my reputation, saw through her attempt to smear my name. So I did nothing. I didn't defend myself. I didn't post rebuttals or send out statements. I let her build her little campaign, let her dig herself deeper into her own bitterness. Because I wasn't playing her game. I was waiting. Because while she was out there throwing everything she had at me, desperate for attention, desperate to make herself feel powerful again, I was preparing my final move. And when I made it, there wouldn't be anything left for her to hold on to. Celeste had always been careful about her image, but this time, her own lies became the wrecking ball that finally brought it all crashing down. She had planned on rebuilding her career, convinced that if she just found the right company, the right connections, she could climb back to the top. She had an interview lined up with a prestigious firm, one that could have given her another chance. But before she even had the chance to sell herself, they found out about the rumors, the anonymous articles, the scandal she had stirred up. They didn't even bother rejecting her politely. They made it clear she was a risk, a liability, unemployable. One by one, every opportunity closed its doors on her. No one wanted to hire someone with a reputation for playing the victim publicly, for trying to ruin an ex-husband through fabricated abuse claims. People in her industry knew that hiring someone like that could mean trouble down the line, so they didn't take the chance. Her money ran out faster than she expected. She wasn't good at managing finances. She had always relied on me for that. Without a steady income, without a safety net, she had nowhere to go except the one place she had always looked down on. Her mother's house. The same woman Celeste had spent years ridiculing, belittling, rolling her eyes at. Now, she was sleeping in the same childhood bedroom she had once been so eager to escape from. Trapped in the life she had always thought she was too good for. And then, one evening, she showed up at my door. I heard the knock and almost ignored it, assuming it was a neighbor or a delivery. But when I opened it, there she was. She looked nothing like the woman I had been married to. Her hair wasn't styled. Her clothes were far from the polished, designer outfits she used to wear. But it wasn't her appearance that struck me the most. It was her eyes. They were hollow. She gave me a weak smile, the kind that once would have been followed by a sweetly manipulative plea. "Leo," she whispered. "Please. Just a little. I have nothing left. You can't just leave me like this." I stared at her for a long moment, and I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no pity. Just nothing. Finally, I spoke. "I didn't leave you today, Celeste. I left you that night when you raised your glass and made a mockery of me." Her lips trembled, but I didn't wait for another word. I closed the door, and this time, it stayed closed forever. A year passed. A year of freedom, of rebuilding, of finally living without the weight of Celeste's manipulation pressing down on me. I had moved on in every way, new home, new habits, new life. I rarely thought about her anymore. Whatever happened to her after that final moment at my doorstep wasn't my concern. Then, out of nowhere, another letter from the court arrived. For a moment, I almost laughed. I thought, what now? What possible excuse could she have left to drag me back into her mess? Then I read the papers. Celeste had filed for alimony. Her claim was bold, even for her. We were together for almost 10 years. I supported his career, and now I have nothing. I deserve compensation. I shook my head, not even surprised at this point. She had nothing left to lose, so she was taking one last desperate swing, hoping something would stick. But what she didn't seem to understand was that you cannot squeeze money out of a man who has already outmaneuvered you. My lawyer, Jane, barely even blinked when I called her. She has no case, no kids, no long-term financial dependency, no medical issues. It will not go anywhere. And she was right. The court rejected her claim immediately. But Celeste was not just defeated. She had embarrassed herself. The judge dismissed the case so quickly that it became clear to everyone present just how ridiculous her attempt was. She was not a victim. She was just a woman who had burned every bridge and now had nowhere left to turn. But what happened outside the courthouse was what truly sealed her downfall. As I walked toward my car, she ran after me. "You are going to steal my last chance to live?" she screamed, right there in the middle of the street. Heads turned. People stopped. The woman who had spent years carefully crafting her image of sophistication was now publicly unraveling, shouting like a desperate, broken person. I did not say a word. I just opened the door of my brand new car, slid into the driver's seat, and pulled away, leaving her standing there, alone in the middle of the sidewalk. And that was the last time I ever saw Celeste. Leo's life after Celeste was not just about moving on. It was about reclaiming everything he had lost. He bought a new house by the ocean, something he had always dreamed of but never pursued. It was modern but warm, with large windows that overlooked the endless blue waves. Every morning, he woke up to the sound of the tide instead of the suffocating silence of an empty marriage. He started his own company, a consulting agency designed to help small businesses navigate financial crises. He no longer worked just to fix problems for the highest bidder. He worked on his own terms, choosing clients that truly needed his expertise rather than those who just wanted a quick way out of their own greed and mismanagement. And he went back to boxing, not just for himself, but for others. He began offering free training sessions for teenagers who needed an outlet, a way to build confidence and discipline. He saw himself in some of them, young, angry, trying to find their place in the world. Teaching them reminded him why he had fallen in love with the sport in the first place. But the biggest surprise of all was meeting someone new. She was nothing like Celeste. Where Celeste had been obsessed with appearances, this woman was effortlessly real. Where Celeste had measured love in status and validation, she measured it in shared laughter and quiet moments of understanding. She did not try to change him, did not critique his every move. She just enjoyed being with him, and for the first time in years, Leo felt what it was like to be truly seen. One evening, he sat on the shore, coffee in hand, watching the waves roll in. The woman he loved sat beside him, a book in her hands, laughing softly at something she had just read. The sound was light, unforced, and it filled him with a kind of peace he had never known before. He had been through hell, and now he knew what real life was.